Most people lose years explaining themselves to people who already decided who they are. The worst part is that it happens invisibly. They think the problem was communication. They think they chose the wrong words, picked the wrong moment, came across too strong. They believe that if they could just be clearer, calmer, more agreeable, someone would finally see them correctly. Carl Jung understood something harder about this. People do not see you. They see the version of you their mind is able to hold. Once that lands, your entire relationship with other human beings starts to shift because you begin noticing something uncomfortable in every interaction. There are always two of you in the room. There is who you actually are, and there is the role people have unconsciously assigned to you. Most human beings spend an entire life inside roles they never agreed to. The good son, the quiet friend, the funny one, the sensitive girl, the failure, the responsible one who never needs anything. Once a group decides your identity, everything you do gets filtered through it. Even your growth becomes suspicious. Especially your growth. People are comfortable when your identity stays predictable because predictability holds the social order in place. The moment you move past the role they gave you, tension appears. It shows up in small distortions first. You become more confident and people call you arrogant. You stop over-explaining and people call you cold. You start setting limits and certain people quietly step back. Nothing about you got worse. The version of you they benefited from is disappearing, and that loss is what they are actually reacting to. People do not resent your weakness. Weakness keeps the ranking intact. What they resent is the possibility that you might outgrow them.
I didn't know it could feel like this. I could have kept my distance. Now it's too late. We're only here for a moment, gone in a blink. Try to keep what's real. I know you. I didn't know that I would fall so fast. I'd have held on tighter to every last. One day I'll still be right here with you. If only time moves slower, this could last.
There is a mechanism running underneath all of this, mostly below awareness. Human beings project. We take the parts of ourselves we cannot tolerate, the buried ambition, the punished anger, and we locate them in other people where they can be criticized safely, which means most people are not interacting with you at all. They are interacting with their interpretation of you, built out of their fears, their insecurities, their unmet desires, their private frustrations. Once you see it clearly, old memories start rearranging themselves. You remember moments where your intentions seemed obvious to you and arrived as something else entirely. Kindness read as weakness, silence read as insecurity, ambition read as selfishness. At the time, each of those felt like your failure. From a distance, they look like your behavior being run through a machine you never had access to. Then comes the part nobody wants to accept. Being understood was never fully under your control. Understanding requires self-awareness, and most people do not have enough of it to see past their own projections. That is not an insult. The absence of self-awareness is invisible from the inside, which is exactly what makes it so durable. This is why some people will punish you for changing, rarely out loud. The punishment arrives as a change in temperature. Their tone shifts. Their energy cools. The support quietly disappears the moment you stop playing the character they wrote for you. And the more authentic you become, the fewer people feel comfortable around you, because authenticity disturbs social illusions. Most relationships run on an unspoken agreement nobody has ever said aloud. I will keep being who you expect if you keep being who I expect. The moment one person breaks that contract, discomfort begins. This explains a kind of exhaustion people cannot account for. They think they are tired from talking. They are tired from performing, tired from managing reactions in real time, from adjusting their personality depending on who is standing there, from carrying versions of themselves that stopped feeling real years ago. Over time, something worse develops. The false self starts getting better results than the true one. It receives more warmth. It is easier to be around, easier to praise, easier to keep. Given a choice between the self that works and the self that is real, most people keep choosing the one that works, and the choosing happens so quietly that they never register it as a choice. Jung called the outward face the persona, and he did not use the word as an accusation. In the beginning, the mask protects. It lets a child survive a house where certain feelings were dangerous. It lets an adult keep a job and keep the peace. The problem starts later, when the mask stops being something you wear and becomes something you are. Approval is what does it. The praise is real and it accumulates. A man admired for being unshakable receives that admiration for 20 years, and somewhere in the middle of it, he loses the ability to say he is afraid, because the equipment for saying it was never built, and every relationship he has now assumes the fear does not exist. A woman known for her sweetness finds that anger has become unavailable to her. That genuine mistreatment arrives as a headache or a week of exhaustion instead of a sentence. Someone respected for being intelligent becomes quietly terrified of being caught not knowing and arranges his conversation so that he never is. Eventually, people stop relating to each other and start relating as masks, negotiating with masks. This is why conversations can run 3 hours and leave almost nothing behind. Words were exchanged in volume. Very little was said. Each person offered the fragments that historically produced acceptance and withheld anything that might have produced risk. You can watch this happen in almost any environment. Families, schools, friend groups, workplaces. Every system quietly rewards predictability because a consistent person is easy to categorize and a categorized person is easy to manage. When someone changes without warning, the anxiety spreads through the whole group because transformation destabilizes an order nobody agreed to consciously but everyone depends on. Notice how people react when someone gains real confidence. Not the performed kind. The quiet person begins speaking directly. The insecure person stops fishing for reassurance. The one who never refused anything starts refusing things. The environment responds strangely. Not always with hostility, often with jokes, distance, small exclusions, advice delivered in a slightly concerned voice. Human beings pressure each other to stay psychologically familiar, and they do it without knowing that is what they are doing. Almost nobody chooses their personality. It gets assembled early under conditions of dependence by someone too small to negotiate the terms. Think about what a child is actually learning in those years. Not manners, though that is the stated subject. What is being learned is a map of which behaviors bring warmth and which ones bring its withdrawal. Smile at your aunt. Don't be difficult in front of guests. Lower your voice. Stop crying about it. Your father has had a long day. Underneath the instruction, there is a pattern, and the pattern is that certain expressions of you produce closeness while others produce cold air. A child cannot survive cold air.
Trains are rumbling down the old track so fine. Got my harmonica wailing, feeling mighty divine. A windy city blues blowing through my soul. Windy city blues making me feel whole. From the loop to the south side, where the good times roll. Nights on Maxwell Street, dancing under the lights. Nights on Maxwell Street, dancing under the lights. Chicago's got that rhythm, turning wrongs into right.
So the child adapts. The adaptation happens below language, and it happens fast. A boy who can read his mother's mood from the sound of the front door is not learning a skill he will be able to switch off at 25. He is building a permanent instrument. It will serve him in some rooms and cost him enormously in others. And for most of his life, he will experience its readings as facts about the world rather than as a habit he acquired at 7. Families hand out positions this way. One child becomes the capable one, and the household's relief is so warm that the position hardens into identity. Another becomes the one who worries everyone and receives concentrated attention for it, which is a form of nourishment even when it comes wrapped in disappointment. A third becomes the peacemaker, the one who reads the temperature and diffuses things and grows into an adult with an unusual talent for reading temperature and no clear idea what he wants for dinner. These roles are assigned according to what the family needed, not according to who anyone was. Then the equation completes itself. If being misread threatens rejection and rejection feels unsurvivable, then being fully yourself becomes a risk to manage rather than a state to live in. That equation gets written early, and it is almost never revisited because it works. It produces a functional person who is liked and employed and invited to things. What it also produces is a split. One self stays above the waterline where it can be seen and rewarded. The other goes underneath, where it is not addressed and not visible, and where it continues to exist anyway. Jung called that submerged part the shadow, and the shadow does not dissolve because you stopped looking at it. It waits inside resentment that seems disproportionate. It waits inside sudden anger that surprises even you, inside fantasies of leaving that you would never say out loud, inside a tiredness that makes no logical sense. The more of yourself you have buried in exchange for acceptance, the heavier that region becomes. Eventually you no longer know whether people love you or love the version of you that is easy to digest. That question changes a person, because once it exists, you start examining every relationship differently. Who actually knows me? Who only knows the role I learned to perform in order to be kept? At some point, a specific loneliness appears. The loneliness of being unseen. You can sit in a room with people who like you, who laugh at what you say, who have known you for 11 years and would come to your father's funeral and still feel invisible. Underneath all of it, you know they are relating to an edited file, and the editing happened so long ago that even you have trouble finding the original. The disturbing part is that they are not lying. They believe they know you. From where they stand, the relationship is complete. Nothing looks missing because the missing part has never been in the room, and you cannot notice the absence of something you have never seen. Most misunderstanding is not accidental, it is structural. Human beings simplify each other because actually knowing another person is expensive. It requires holding contradictions at once, updating your model when they change, tolerating the discomfort of not being able to predict them. Nobody has that budget for everyone they meet, so the mind compresses. He's insecure, she's difficult. Once the phrase exists, it starts doing the work that observation used to do. From then on, attention becomes selective without anyone deciding it. Evidence that fits the label gets remembered. Evidence that contradicts it gets treated as an exception and disappears. You can be reliable for 4 years and late twice, and if the file says unreliable, those 2 occasions are the story. This is why changing someone's perception of you is nearly impossible. You are not arguing with an opinion. You are arguing with the stability of their internal world. If they were badly wrong about you, they might be wrong about their marriage, their choices, their father, themselves. Most people will pay almost anything to avoid finding that out. It is safer to reduce a person to a fixed identity than to accept how complicated people actually are. Your own mind does this too, and admitting it is what keeps this understanding from turning into contempt. You have a one-line summary of a cousin you have not really looked at since you were both teenagers. Every time you see him, you collect new evidence and file it under the old heading. You are also a projector, not only a screen. What irritates us most in other people usually points to something we disowned in ourselves. The arrogant man is unbearable to someone who was taught that wanting attention is shameful. The confident woman is grating to someone carrying buried self-hatred. The person who leaves a stable career to try something uncertain unsettles everyone who talk themselves out of it, because his existence proves that the thing they called impossible was only frightening. This is why authenticity generates tension. Because it puts people in front of the parts of themselves they abandoned. People who suppress their anger resent direct people. People who gave up on what they wanted resent people who did not. People who built an identity on approval are quietly afraid of anyone who no longer needs it. Freedom is unpleasant to watch from inside a cage you agreed to. Most relationships do not end when respect disappears. They end when awareness appears, and awareness cannot be returned. Once you have seen the layer underneath, you cannot go back to hearing only the words. A person can decide to stay in a friendship after understanding what it actually runs on, and many people do, sometimes for good reasons. What nobody manages is to unsee it. This is the real cost of the whole recognition, and it should be said plainly rather than sold as liberation. You give up a certain innocence about the people around you, and you do not get it back. What you receive in exchange is accuracy, which is worth having and which is lonelier than the illusion was. Once you notice these patterns, ordinary conversation starts sounding different. You hear the layer beneath the words. A compliment with a faint metallic edge, admiration mixed with something that wants to measure, concern that operates as a leash while speaking entirely in the language of care. Advice given with real warmth that would, if you followed it, keep you exactly where you are. Listen to the phrases, be realistic. You've changed. Each one is defensible, and each one can be true in the right mouth. The tell is timing. They appear at the exact moment you begin doing something that would move you out of the position you occupy in that person's world. Underneath every conversation, there is a second conversation about status and dependence, and it is conducted through gestures rather than words? Who apologizes first? Who has to explain themselves and who does not? Who backs down when the temperature rises? Who absorbs the small disrespects and calls it being easygoing? These exchanges determine the actual terms of a relationship far more than anything either person ever says. In that second conversation, the one who most needs to be understood is at a permanent disadvantage. Constant explanation transmits a message underneath its content, and the message is a request for permission to be real. Anyone with an instinct for leverage picks this up immediately, usually without knowing they picked it up. They learn that keeping you slightly confused about yourself keeps you close. They learn that if they question your intentions long enough, you will begin questioning them yourself, and once you are doing that work internally, they no longer have to do anything at all. This is why you can leave certain conversations feeling guilty about something you did not do. You did not lose an argument. Your nervous system was recruited into defending an identity that was never being examined fairly to begin with. The more your stability depends on being perceived correctly, the more easily you can be moved. One accusation and the ground shifts. One rejection rewrites your account of the last 2 years. Your center of gravity is sitting inside other people, which means anyone who wants to move it can. There is a moment in some lives when the explaining simply stops. It does not usually arrive as anger. Anger is still engagement, still an attempt to correct the record. What arrives is closer to recognition. You are in the middle of a familiar defense, laying out your reasoning for the third time to someone who decided a long time ago, and you notice what you are actually doing. You are asking for permission to be seen accurately. You are requesting entry into another mind on fair terms, and those terms were never available. Because people are not neutral observers. They look through wounds, ego, fear, envy, appetite. Even love distorts, especially love, because the people closest to you have the most invested in the version of you that keeps their world steady. A mother who built her purpose around being needed will feel something complicated when her son stops needing her, and she will express it as worry about his choices, and the worry will be completely sincere. A friend who felt secure next to your old insecurity will find your confidence slightly irritating and will express it as concern that you are becoming someone else. A partner can ask for honesty for years and then discover that one particular honesty threatens the arrangement they were quietly depending on, and the discovery will not present itself as an argument about honesty. It will present itself as an argument about your tone. None of these people are villains. This is what attachment does. It shapes perception before perception reaches awareness. What most of us are actually tracking in the people around us is emotional function. Who steadies me, who confirms I am doing all right, who threatens the story I tell about my life, who makes me feel behind, which leads to the coldest recognition in this whole territory. A number of people never wanted you specifically. They wanted reliable access to the function you performed, the listener who absorbs everything and asks for nothing, the rescuer who answers at 2 a.m, the entertainer who keeps the mood up, the one who is always slightly worse off, which makes everyone else feel stable by comparison. When the function ends, the closeness ends, nobody announces it. It shows up as drift, as scheduling problems, as a friendship that simply stops replenishing itself. You can usually identify your own function by noticing what happens when you fail to provide it. Have one bad month where you have nothing left to give and watch who is still there in the second week. Not who checks in once out of politeness, who is still there when you are boring, unavailable, and offering nothing. That test is unpleasant, and it is accurate, and most people already know the result before they run it, which is why they avoid running it. None of this means you were used deliberately. Most of it happens without a decision anywhere in the process. People gravitate toward what steadies them, and they call the gravity affection, because from the inside, that is exactly what it feels like. This is why growth is often lonelier than suffering was. Suffering keeps relationships in their familiar shape because everyone knows their part. Improvement rearranges the furniture, and people get uneasy when they can no longer find you where you used to be. Watch how quickly your transformation gets questioned. You've changed, almost always delivered with a faint disappointment. But change is the most ordinary fact of being alive. What the sentence actually reports is that you have stopped behaving in the way that made someone comfortable. That single mistranslation accounts for a large number of broken friendships, marriages, and family silences. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are. He also understood the bill attached to it. Becoming yourself disturbs the people around you because your authenticity forces them into contact with their own masks. Someone who abandoned their ambitions is uncomfortable near someone pursuing theirs. Someone trapped in pleasing everyone is irritated by boundaries. Someone dependent on external validation is quietly threatened by anyone who can walk alone. This is why individuality gets attacked in the language of care. The words sound protective, and the fear underneath them is unconscious. The person delivering the warning is not lying to you. They are being moved by something they have never examined, and they experience it as concern. Here is the darker version. Some people will support your growth only for as long as it does not exceed theirs. The moment your progress becomes undeniable, their warmth changes temperature. It rarely happens consciously, which is exactly what makes it dangerous. Human beings can undermine each other while sincerely believing they are helping. Once you understand this, your relationship with conflict changes permanently. You stop assuming every misunderstanding can be repaired with better communication. Some people misunderstand you strategically, others misunderstand you emotionally. Many misunderstand you because seeing you accurately would require them to look at themselves. That is the part almost everyone avoids. Understanding another person requires the death of certain illusions. It takes flexibility, humility, the willingness to be wrong. The ego prefers certainty because certainty feels safe. So instead of asking who this person actually is, most people unconsciously ask how this person fits into what I already believe. Those are completely different questions. One is looking for truth, the other is looking for comfort, and comfort almost always wins. This is also why people become uncomfortable when you stop defending yourself. Silence breaks the expected sequence. When you no longer over-explain, they lose access to your emotional center, and with it the ability to reach your need for validation. Strangely, this tends to anger them more than the original disagreement did. Someone arguing with you often stopped caring about the subject a while ago, What they want is confirmation that their reading of you still governs. Your calm acceptance of being misread removes the mechanism entirely. There is nothing left to grip. The world trains people to believe they must constantly explain their own humanity, explain why they deserve respect, explain why something hurt, explain why they need space, explain why they changed. There is a hidden violence in permanent self-explanation, because over time it teaches the mind that your inner life requires outside approval before it counts as real. And once a person needs external understanding in order to feel stable, they are fragile by design. The answer to it is individuation, the slow work of becoming whole rather than approved. Those are different aims, and they lead in different directions. Approval is conditional, and it is administered by people whose criteria keep changing. Wholeness is internal. It is less pleasant to build, and it holds when the room turns. The person organized around approval scans constantly. Did that land badly? Am I welcome here? Was that too much? The person moving toward wholeness asks a harder set of questions. What am I giving up to keep this peace? Which parts of me exist only because they were once necessary for survival? What have I refused to know about my own life because acceptance was easier than accuracy? Those questions hurt because you start noticing how much your personality shifts depending on the room. A different laugh, a different tone, different opinions, different intensity, different amount of truth. Then the uncomfortable thought arrives. If you change in every room, which one is actually you? Most people avoid that question permanently. They keep adapting automatically until the adaptation becomes the identity. But underneath the performance, the psyche keeps a record. It remembers the anger you swallowed, the opinions you kept to yourself, the ambition you downplayed so nobody would feel threatened. Suppressed authenticity eventually turns into a low resentment toward life itself. And it is not life that betrayed you. Self-betrayal almost never feels dramatic while it is happening. It feels practical. Small silences, small compromises, small performances. You laugh at a comment that stung. You stay quiet to avoid a tense evening. You describe your work in a diminished way so someone at the table will not feel behind. You agree to a plan you did not want because refusing would have required a conversation. Any single instance is nothing. The accumulation is not nothing. Every suppressed reaction leaves residue, and the residue collects. Years later, people wake up with an emptiness they cannot explain, a sense that their life somehow belongs to someone else. The body keeps what the mouth never said, and eventually the mind turns against itself, anxiety without a subject. Irritability aimed at the wrong target, emotional numbness. Exhaustion around specific people that no amount of sleep repairs. These are not random. They are signals reporting that too much of your existence has become artificial. This is why some people feel drained around a particular group and strangely alive when they are by themselves. Solitude removes the performance. No face to read, no tone to adjust. No calculating which opinion is safe here. The monitoring shuts off, and in the quiet, the buried material starts coming back up, which is why so many people cannot sit alone for 10 minutes without reaching for something. The usual explanation is boredom. Boredom is rarely the whole story. A distracted mind can avoid itself indefinitely. A silent mind cannot. Silence is where the unattended parts of a life come to make their case. Jung's warning was that whatever remains unconscious will run your life from below, and you will call the result fate. This is exactly what happens socially. People repeat the same patterns for decades because they never examine the fear underneath. The same kind of partner 3 times. The same collapse of the same friendship in the same argument. It gets called bad luck or a type when what is actually operating is a fear of rejection, a fear of abandonment, a fear of becoming unlikable, a fear of outgrowing the people you came up with, very often a fear of being seen accurately, which hides best of all because it wears the costume of wanting to be understood. A person can spend years complaining that nobody really knows them, while carefully making sure nobody gets close enough to try. Both halves of that are sincere. Real visibility changes relationships. Once you stop performing, certain people disappear. Once you stop seeking approval, some dynamics lose their power completely. Once you stop over-explaining, the manipulative ones become obvious almost immediately because healthy people do not require you to keep defending your own reality. Only controlling people profit from your confusion. Then something cold starts forming in you, and it matters what you do with it, not hatred. Discernment. You begin noticing how many interactions rest on quiet emotional dependence, how many people only feel secure while you remain unsure of yourself, how often guilt functions as social control, how reliably obedience gets rewarded under the name of kindness. Look at the vocabulary. The person who never refuses anything is called good. The person who has abandoned their own needs is called caring. The one running on empty is called dependable and is handed more to carry. Meanwhile, the person who starts setting limits is called selfish, and the label arrives fast, and it is applied hardest by whoever had the most convenient arrangement with the previous version. Boundaries interrupt access, and that is precisely why they expose so much. People confuse love with access to your time and energy, especially in families, where the confusion has decades of practice behind it. Being reachable at any hour is not the same as being cared for. Being predictable in your compliance is not the same as being respected. Needing you is not the same as loving you, though it produces many of the same words. Kindness without limits does not create gratitude, it creates habit. People adjust to whatever you make available, and they do it without deciding to. When you stop abandoning yourself to keep the world comfortable, and you arrive at a conclusion that would have frightened you a few years earlier and now seems almost ordinary, being misunderstood is not always a failure of communication. Sometimes it is a consequence. It is what happens to a person who has stopped supplying the responses that let others place them, predict them, and quietly manage them. The misunderstanding is not proof that something went wrong. It is frequently the first evidence that something went right. The rehearsed conversations end too, though not the way you expected. You never find the sentence. You are driving somewhere on an unremarkable afternoon, and you notice the car is quiet, that you are not building anything, that you have stopped trying to install a corrected version of yourself in a mind that was never going to hold it. Whatever they decide you are, you will not be sitting there waiting to hear it.
Train, stop, don't stop no more. He left me a cold black skillet and a matchbook with your name. Left me a cold black skillet
in a